The day I signed my divorce papers, my hands didn't shake. I thought they would. After 10 years of marriage, after thousands of memories, after believing I had found the man I would grow old with, I expected tears. I expected anger. I expected my heart to break all over again. Instead, I felt strangely calm, because the worst pain had already happened. My husband didn't know I was leaving him. He was smiling that morning, kissing my forehead before walking out the door, telling me he loved me. He had no idea the woman standing in front of him already knew the truth he had spent years hiding. He thought I was still the trusting wife who believed every late-night meeting, every business trip, every excuse that came out of his mouth. He couldn't have been more wrong. Just 3 weeks earlier, I had discovered that the woman I called my best friend wasn't just keeping a secret from me. She was raising my husband's twins. The moment I saw those 2 little children laughing in a quiet backyard, my world stopped. They looked so much like him that I didn't need anyone to explain anything. His smile, his eyes, even the way they laughed. I stood behind a fence, unable to breathe, realizing that everything I believed about my marriage had been a lie. But I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I didn't confront my friend. I simply turned around, got into my car, and drove home in complete silence. That silence became my greatest strength. For the next 3 weeks, I smiled at dinner. I asked him about his day. I folded his clothes. I listened to his stories as if I believed every single word. Meanwhile, I was meeting with a lawyer, protecting my savings, gathering every document I needed, and preparing to disappear from his life without giving him a single warning. He thought he was playing the perfect game. He never imagined I had already won. The divorce papers were signed before he even realized our marriage was over. I packed only what belonged to me, took one last look at the house I had once called home, and quietly closed the front door behind me. I believed that was the end. I believed I had already uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. I was wrong. Just as I reached my car, someone called my name. It was my mother-in-law. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with tears I had never seen before. She grabbed my hand and whispered words that made my entire body freeze. "Please, don't leave yet. There's something your husband never told you, and the truth is even worse than what you already know." People always say that when a marriage falls apart, there are signs. Looking back now, maybe there were. Maybe I just loved my husband too much to see them. My name is Emily, and for 10 years I believed I was one of the lucky ones. I met Ethan when I was 26. He wasn't the richest man in the room or the loudest. What caught my attention was how safe he made me feel. He listened when I spoke. He remembered the little things. On our first date, he noticed I hated onions and never forgot it. It sounds small, but to me, it meant everything. 2 years later, we were married in a small garden surrounded by our closest family and friends. It wasn't a luxury wedding, but it was perfect. We laughed more than we cried, danced until midnight, and promised each other that no matter what life brought us, we'd face it together. For a long time, we did. Our home wasn't huge, but it was full of warmth. Every Sunday morning, we'd cook breakfast together. Ethan made pancakes while I brewed coffee. We'd sit by the kitchen window, planning vacations we hoped to take someday, and talking about the family we dreamed of having. There was only one dream that never came true. We couldn't have children. For years, we visited doctors, tried treatments, and held on to hope after every disappointing appointment. Every time the answer was not yet, Ethan wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "As long as I have you, I'm already lucky." Those words healed me every single time, or at least, I thought they did. My best friend, Rachel, had been part of my life since college. She knew every version of me, the carefree girl, the nervous bride, and the woman quietly struggling with heartbreak after each failed attempt to become a mother. She was like a sister. She spent holidays with us, dropped by without calling, and even had her own mug in our kitchen. Ethan and Rachel got along well, and I never questioned it. Why would I? They were the two people I trusted most in the world. Sometimes the three of us would laugh for hours over dinner. Rachel teased Ethan like an older sister, and he always joked back. Watching them made me happy because I believed the people I loved each other too. If someone had told me then that those same two people would one day become the reason my world fell apart, I would have laughed. I would have called them cruel for even suggesting it. Life felt ordinary in the best possible way. Ethan kissed me goodbye every morning before work. He texted during lunch just to ask if I'd eaten. On weekends, we'd visit his mother, Linda, who treated me like the daughter she'd always wanted. Linda often smiled and said, "Emily, I couldn't have chosen a better wife for my son." Those words always made my heart full. Looking back now, I wonder if she truly believed them, or if she was already hiding worries she didn't know how to share. Still, nothing seemed wrong. Nothing felt broken. If anything, I thought our marriage had become stronger because we'd survived so many difficult years together. We had learned to laugh through disappointment, to comfort each other when life didn't go as planned, and to celebrate the little moments that mattered. At least, that's what I believed. The first crack appeared so quietly that I almost missed it. One evening, Ethan came home later than usual. He looked tired, but not from work. His shirt carried a faint perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked if everything was okay, he smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Just a long day." I believed him. A few days later, Rachel canceled our monthly lunch at the last minute. She sounded nervous on the phone, saying something had come up. It wasn't like her, but I didn't think much of it. Then the small changes started adding up. Late-night phone calls Ethan refused to answer in front of me. Business trips that seemed to happen more often. Rachel becoming strangely unavailable whenever I wanted to see her. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they were the beginning of a nightmare I never saw coming. And I had no idea that, in just a few weeks, one unexpected moment would force me to question every memory, every promise, and every person I had ever trusted. People often ask me when I first knew my husband was hiding something. The truth is, I didn't know, not at first, I only felt it. It started with little moments that seemed too small to matter. Ethan had always been the kind of man who left his phone on the kitchen counter without thinking twice. Sometimes I'd use it to check a recipe or change the music while we cooked dinner. Then, almost overnight, his phone became glued to his hand. If it buzzed, he'd pick it up before I even noticed the sound. If he left the room, the phone went with him. Even when he took a shower, it sat on the bathroom counter instead of the bedside table. It felt strange, but I told myself everyone deserved privacy. I didn't want to become the jealous wife who imagined problems that didn't exist. A week later, another small change caught my attention. Ethan had always hated working late. He loved coming home, changing into comfortable clothes, and spending the evening with me. Suddenly, he had urgent meetings, 3 or 4 nights every week. Whenever I asked if everything was okay at work, he smiled the same practiced smile. "It's just a busy season. It'll calm down soon." I wanted to believe him, so I did. Then Rachel started changing too. She stopped calling me every evening like she always had. Our weekend coffee dates turned into canceled plans and short text messages. "Sorry, Emily, I'm exhausted. Maybe next week?" Something came up. The excuses were polite, but they didn't sound like her. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to surprise her with her favorite blueberry muffins. I drove to her apartment, smiling the whole way, thinking she'd laugh at my unexpected visit. But when I knocked on the door, no one answered. As I turned to leave, I noticed her car wasn't there. That should have been the end of it. Instead, as I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw her car a few streets away. She wasn't alone. A man was sitting beside her. From where I was, I couldn't see his face clearly. I only noticed that he was wearing a dark gray jacket, almost identical to one Ethan owned. My heart skipped for a second. Then I laughed at myself. "You're being ridiculous, Emily," I whispered. Half the men in this city own a gray jacket. I drove home, embarrassed by my own imagination. That night, Ethan came home almost 2 hours later than usual. The same gray jacket hung over his arm. I stared at it for a moment longer than I should have. He noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked casually. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He kissed my forehead, completely unaware that for the first time in 10 years I had looked at him and wondered, what if I don't know you at all? That question stayed with me long after we went to bed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept peacefully beside me. Something deep inside me kept whispering that the life I trusted so completely was beginning to crack. I still didn't have proof, only instincts, and sometimes a woman's instincts see the truth long before her eyes do. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking everything. Maybe Ethan really was busy. Maybe Rachel was going through something she wasn't ready to talk about. Maybe all those little moments meant nothing, but the strange feeling in my chest refused to disappear. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Ethan called me from work. "I have another client dinner tonight," he said. "Don't wait up. I'll probably be home late." His voice sounded calm, almost rehearsed. I smiled even though he couldn't see me. "Okay, drive safely." The moment I hung up, I looked at the phone in my hand and whispered, "Please don't make me regret trusting you." For the first time in my life, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I followed my own husband. About an hour later, I saw his car leave the office parking lot. Instead of driving toward the restaurant district, he headed in the opposite direction. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "Where are you going, Ethan?" He drove across town into a quiet neighborhood, filled with small houses and tree-lined streets. It wasn't a place we had ever visited together. Finally, he parked in front of a modest white house with a blue front door. I stopped my car half a block away. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it. Ethan stepped out, looked around for a moment, and smiled. It wasn't the polite smile he gave strangers. It was the warm, genuine smile I hadn't seen in months. Before I could understand why, the front door opened. Rachel walked outside. For one hopeful second, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she had moved. Maybe she needed help fixing something. Maybe. My thoughts stopped the moment she wrapped her arms around him. Not a friendly hug, not the kind two old friends share. She held him the way a wife welcomes her husband home, and Ethan hugged her back without hesitation. I felt the air leave my lungs. Tears filled my eyes so quickly that the house became a blur. I wanted to drive away. I wanted to pretend I had never seen any of it. But then, 2 small children came running out of the house. They couldn't have been older than 4, a little boy, a little girl. They laughed as they raced toward Ethan, calling out in happy voices. "Daddy." The single word shattered every part of me. Ethan knelt down, opened his arms, and lifted both children into a tight embrace. He kissed their foreheads, laughing as they clung to his neck. The little girl played with his hair. The little boy proudly showed him a toy airplane. They looked completely comfortable together, like they had done this 100 times before, like they were a family. I covered my mouth to stop myself from crying out loud. My whole body trembled. The children looked so much like Ethan that there was no room for doubt. The same deep brown eyes, the same crooked smile. Even the way the little boy tilted his head when he laughed reminded me of my husband. For years, Ethan had held my hand while I cried because we couldn't have children. For years, he had promised me that being together was enough. And all that time, he had another family, another home, another life, with my best friend. I don't remember how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe an hour. I watched them through tears as they walked inside together, the twins holding Ethan's hands as if they never wanted to let go. That image burned itself into my memory. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the death of the future I had spent 10 years believing in. When I finally started my car, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I felt empty. Some betrayals are so deep that they steal every emotion except silence. As I drove away, one thought echoed through my mind again and again. If Ethan could lie to me for years, what else didn't I know? When I reached home that evening, the house felt different. It was the same living room. The same family photos lined the hallway. The same wedding picture hung above the fireplace, showing two people smiling as if nothing could ever come between them. I stood there staring at that photo for a long time. Then I quietly took it off the wall and placed it face down inside a drawer. Not because I hated it, because I couldn't bear to look at a lie anymore. I wiped my tears, washed my face, and practiced a smile in the bathroom mirror. By the time Ethan walked through the front door 2 hours later, I looked exactly like the wife he expected to see. "Hey, sweetheart," he said with a tired smile. "Sorry I'm late." I looked into his eyes, searching for even the smallest sign of guilt. There was none. "Long day?" I asked. "You have no idea," he replied, laughing softly. The words almost made me laugh too, if only he knew how long my day had been. "I made your favorite pasta," I said. His face lit up. "You're amazing, amazing." That word echoed painfully in my mind. As we sat across from each other at the dinner table, he talked about fake meetings, fake clients, fake traffic. Every sentence was another brick added to the wall of lies between us, and I nodded as though I believed every word. For the first time in our marriage, silence became my greatest weapon. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I quietly picked up my laptop and searched for one thing: family divorce lawyers near me. My hands trembled as I booked an appointment for the following morning. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my friends. There was no one left I trusted enough to share my pain. The next day, I walked into the lawyer's office wearing sunglasses, hoping no one would recognize me. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "First consultation?" I nodded. A few minutes later, a woman named Olivia invited me into her office. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything, about Ethan, about Rachel, about the twins. When I finally finished speaking, the room was silent. Olivia leaned forward and said gently, "Emily, before you confront him, protect yourself." "What do you mean?" "If he has hidden another family for years, don't assume he's been honest about money either. Find every financial record you can. Make copies of everything. Stay calm. Don't let him know what you've discovered." Those words changed everything. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I barely recognized. Every morning, I smiled and kissed Ethan goodbye. Every evening, I asked him about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I thanked him for bringing home groceries. He believed I was completely unaware. Meanwhile, I quietly gathered every bank statement, tax document, insurance paper, and property record I could find. Some nights, while Ethan slept peacefully beside me, I sat in the guest room making copies of documents until sunrise. The more I searched, the more questions I found. There were regular payments to an account I had never seen before, rent for a property I didn't know existed, school fees, medical bills, even birthday purchases that had nothing to do with our family. Each receipt confirmed what my heart already knew. He hadn't made one terrible mistake. He had built an entirely different life while pretending to share one with me. One afternoon, as I organized the papers into neat folders, my phone rang Rachel. I stared at her name until it stopped ringing. A second later, she sent a message. "I miss you. We should have lunch soon." I read it 3 times. Then I quietly deleted it. No reply, no questions, no anger. She didn't deserve my emotions anymore. A few days later, Ethan walked into the kitchen carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. "My beautiful wife deserves flowers," he said with a grin. A month earlier, that simple gesture would have melted my heart. Now all I could think was, were these flowers bought before or after he kissed the mother of his children? I thanked him anyway. I even placed the flowers in water and smiled. He watched. The truth was, I had stopped trying to save my marriage the moment I saw those twins call him Daddy. Now I was only protecting the woman I had almost forgotten, myself. By the end of the second week, every document was ready. Every signature was prepared. Every detail had been carefully planned. Ethan still believed he was living two perfect lives. He had no idea that one of them was about to disappear forever. And this time, I wasn't going to warn him. The morning I chose to end, my marriage felt strangely ordinary. The sun was shining through the kitchen window. Birds were singing outside, and Ethan was humming while making coffee, completely unaware that everything was about to change. He smiled as he handed me my favorite mug. "Any plans today?" he asked. I looked at him for a brief moment. The man standing in front of me looked exactly like the husband I had fallen in love with, but I finally understood that appearances could lie. "I have a few errands," I replied calmly. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "I'll see you tonight. Love you." For the first time in 10 years, I didn't say those words back. Instead, I simply smiled. An hour after he left, I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Every document had already been prepared. Olivia placed the final papers in front of me. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I looked down at my wedding ring. That tiny circle of gold had once meant forever. Now it felt like a chain that had been holding me to a life built on lies. Without saying a word, I slipped the ring off my finger and placed it gently on the table. Then I signed every page, one signature, then another. With each stroke of the pen, I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was taking back my peace. When the last paper was finished, Olivia gave me a small, reassuring smile. "It's done." I took a slow, deep breath. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest felt a little lighter. That afternoon, I returned home before Ethan. I packed one suitcase with only the things that truly belonged to me. My clothes, a few books, family photographs, and the old journal my mother had given me years ago. I left everything else exactly where it was. Before walking out, I placed the divorce papers neatly on the dining table beside our wedding photo. There was no angry letter, no accusations, no dramatic goodbye. Only one handwritten sentence. "You chose another family long before I chose to leave. Take care of the life you fought so hard to hide." I picked up my suitcase, closed the front door behind me, and walked toward my car without looking back. Just as I reached the driveway, I heard someone call my name. "Emily." "Wait!" I turned around. It was Linda, my mother-in-law. She looked pale, her hands trembling as she hurried toward me. Tears filled her eyes before she could even speak. She grabbed my hand tightly and whispered words that made my heart stop. "Please don't leave yet. Because the story you know isn't the whole truth." I looked into Linda's eyes, expecting her to defend her son. Instead, she looked like a woman carrying a burden she could no longer keep. "Emily," she whispered, struggling to hold back tears. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." I hesitated. A part of me wanted to drive away and never look back, but something in her voice stopped me. We sat on the wooden bench in the front yard, the same place where Ethan had once asked me to marry him. The memory felt painfully ironic. Linda took a deep breath. "I found out about Rachel and the twins almost a year ago." My heart sank. "You knew?" She lowered her head in shame. "I didn't know from the beginning. I discovered it by accident. I confronted Ethan, and he begged me not to tell you. He said he was going to end it, that he just needed time." I closed my eyes. "Time?" I whispered bitterly. "He had years, I know," Linda replied, tears rolling down her face. "And every day I stayed silent is something I'll regret for the rest of my life." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick envelope. "I wanted you to have this." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs, receipts, birthday invitations, school reports. There were pictures of Ethan celebrating the twins' birthdays, smiling beside Rachel as if they were a perfect family. The dates stretched back almost 5 years. 5 years. While I was praying for a miracle, crying after every failed fertility treatment. He had been blowing out birthday candles with another family. I couldn't stop the tears anymore. Linda gently placed her hand over mine. "I'm so sorry, Emily." I wiped my face, trying to steady my breathing. "I don't understand one thing," I said quietly. "Why tell me this now? I've already divorced him." Linda looked away before answering. "Because there's something else you deserve to know." She swallowed hard. "Rachel didn't become pregnant by accident." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Linda's voice shook. "She knew how desperate you were to have children. She knew your marriage was already hurting because of it. She kept telling Ethan that you would never be able to give him the family he wanted." My chest tightened. "She manipulated him?" Linda nodded slowly. "She took advantage of his weakness. But don't misunderstand me, Emily. Ethan made his own choices. No one forced him to betray you. He chose that path every single day." I stared at the photographs one last time before placing them back inside the envelope. For weeks, I had believed Rachel stole my husband. Now I realized something even more painful. She hadn't stolen him. She simply revealed the kind of man he truly was. As I stood up to leave, Linda softly called after me. "One day he'll beg for your forgiveness." I looked back with tears in my eyes, but my face was calm. "No, Linda, I don't need his apology anymore. I just need my peace." And for the first time since my world fell apart, I truly believed I was going to find it. 3 months after the divorce, my life looked completely different. The silence in my new apartment no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. For years I had confused being married with being loved. Now I finally understood that real love could never survive on lies. Every morning, I opened the curtains, made myself a cup of coffee, and watched the sunrise without wondering where Ethan was, or whether he was telling me the truth. That constant weight on my heart was gone. One afternoon, while organizing books in my small home office, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. His name appeared on the screen for the first time since the divorce. I stared at it for a few seconds, then it stopped ringing. A moment later, a message appeared. "Emily, please, just give me one chance to explain. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you." I read every word without feeling the anger I once thought would stay with me forever. Instead, I felt something unexpected, nothing. I quietly deleted the message and placed my phone back on the desk. Some conversations no longer deserve an answer. A week later, Linda came to visit me. She looked relieved to see me smiling again. "I'm proud of you," she said as we shared tea in my tiny kitchen. "You could have tried to destroy Ethan." I smiled gently. "But then I would have become someone I never wanted to be." She nodded. "He finally understands what he lost." I looked out the window before answering. "I hope one day he also understands why he lost it." Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'll always think of you as my daughter." Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't tears of heartbreak. They were tears of healing. As the months passed, I rebuilt the life I thought had ended. I returned to hobbies I had forgotten. I traveled with my sister. I laughed without forcing it. Most importantly, I learned to trust myself again. Sometimes people asked if I hated Ethan. I always gave the same answer. No hate keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. I've already let go. The greatest revenge was never exposing him. It was refusing to let his choices define the rest of my life. One quiet evening, I opened the journal my mother had given me years before. On the very last page, I wrote a single sentence. The day I stopped waiting for an apology was the day I finally became free. I closed the journal with a smile, not because my story had been perfect, but because after everything I had lost, I had found something even more valuable: myself.